to network with other people in your specific area of interest. There are a couple of groups for Women in Bio is one, and Triangle Women in STEM are some other active groups. And then I want to let you know about the next two Career Development Network events. They're both on Thursdays. The next one is August 15th, and we'll have Angela Stewart, our speaker for today, is also going to be presenting on mastering interview skills. And then on September 26th, our topic will be LinkedIn. So we have a speaker who will be sharing how to boost your career with LinkedIn, and then we'll follow that with free headshot photos for all attendees. And then also in September, we have a career fair that will be held here at the center. So at this point, I'd like to introduce our speaker for today. Angela Stewart has a bachelor's degree in biology with a minor in chemistry from UNC. So she's got a love of science, but another passion of hers is helping people to succeed. And so she's done that over the past 18 years as a recruiter, and she's been very successful at this. She's currently the vice president at Science and Clinical Recruiting with Kelly Science. And she's been a great partner to us. She volunteered to speak at our Career Development Network events. She has seen probably more than her fair share of resumes, and she can give you some advice from a recruiter hiring manager perspective on how to write your resume. And so please welcome Angela.
Perfect. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I want to apologize. I am losing my voice a little bit. Bad timing, I know. I wish I could say I'd been to some crazy concert last night, but alas, that is not the case. So apologies in advance. I might have to stop and take some water breaks. And I do have someone here backing me up. She flew in all the way from Paris. She's also a Kelly Science and Clinical rep. So we're certainly excited to have her here. So let's talk a little bit about Kelly, and then we'll jump into the resume piece. So for those of y'all who are not familiar with Kelly Science and Clinical, we sit under the Kelly arm. So Kelly houses a suite of different products, including IT, engineering, science and clinical, as well as our professional and light industrial division. So I am the vice president of recruiting for our Kelly Science and Clinical team. I manage a team of recruiters across the United States and Puerto Rico. We also service Canada. So we support 1,000 sites across North America. Those are life science clients, many of which are in RTP, but again, they are all over the United States, Canada, and Puerto Rico. I know that Susan went through my background, but as she mentioned, I have a biology and chemistry background from UNC Chapel Hill. I'm not unique. 80% of our recruiters have that, which I think really affords us the opportunity to have really strong conversations with talent like yourselves, as well as our clients and end users, and really connecting the gap between how each of you or your peers in the space are a good fit for the opportunities that the clients have. And then just a stat about the number of talent that we placed last year. So any given year, we tend to range between 9,000 and 10,000 talent placed on assignment every year. So if that just gives you an idea of the breadth of opportunities that we currently have and that we have continuously throughout the space. So let's talk a little bit about the basics. So resumes and CVs and this whole space is something that I'm really passionate about. To Susan's point, I've probably looked at 1 million resumes over the last 18 years. I know what really tends to get clients attracted to those resumes, as well as some things that will have a recruiter bypass them, right? So we'll go through this in a few minutes, but you tend to have about 6 seconds to grab someone's attention, which is not a lot of time, right? So we're really here to try to help set y'all up for success so that your resume stands out in those 6 seconds. So before we get there, let's talk a little bit about what a resume and a CV is. This is a hot topic, tends to be a little bit confusing for candidates, but resumes and CVs are not the same thing. They are often used interchangeably, but incorrectly so. Resumes are probably what you guys are gonna want to focus on, and that's what we'll focus on here today. But resumes are a synopsis of your education, your work experience, and your skills. CVs, rather, are a complete digest of an academic history. Those tend to include publications, they tend to be used for advanced level degrees, and they tend to be used for individuals wanting to enter the academic space, right? So if you're applying for a postdoc or research position at UNC or Duke, probably want to stick with a CV. If you're looking for a job in industry, you probably want a resume. So while these two are often used interchangeably, they are not the same thing. All right, so let's get to the layout, first impressions. Again, this is where you get into that 6-second piece about how you've got to grab someone's attention really quickly in order to get noticed. So, few things. Name and contact information, obviously the most critical piece of the resume, right? How are they going to get in touch with you? I would suggest only listing one email address and one phone number. List a phone number that obviously you access, you have voicemail on, something that you continuously monitor. With that being said, make sure that it's a phone number that you're just cautious that job employers might be calling you on, right? So I'll give you a little story. We sometimes call candidates, or our hiring managers call candidates on our behalf, and they're not in a spot where they want to talk, right? They're either checking out at Target or ordering a cheeseburger at McDonald's. Not a great first impression, right? So if you're in those circumstances and you see a number that pops up, maybe it says a company, right? Maybe it says Biogen or Kelly Science and Clinical or Fujifilm. If you're in a spot where you don't feel like you can give that person your full attention, let it go to voicemail and call them back, okay? That's gonna make a much better impression than answering the phone and it's, you're paying for your McDonald's cheeseburger. So just wanna be cautious of that. You do not wanna include anything around your date of birth, your age, your race, anything like that. Also, you do not wanna include citizenship status. This is not the place on a resume. So, again, that's not something you want to include. Obviously, you want to keep it as simple as you can while still including the information that you need to get across. And we'll talk about what the content is going to look like here in a minute. But in terms of formatting, it needs to be simple, y'all. Don't need text boxes. You don't need outlines and lines and headers and all of that. It needs to be as simple as you can possibly make it. You also do not want to include photos or images. I know that was a trend about 10 years ago or so to put your photo or image on your resume. It's just not a good idea. That's not the place for photos on a resume. Also, you want to make sure you're using bullet points, right? So sentences are hard for people to read at a glance. So use bullets. And again, we'll get into what the content of those bullets need to be. But wherever you can, try to use a bullet in that resume. Obviously, we went through keeping it simple. So you want to use a clear font, consistent formatting. And then this one is a question I always get asked about, which is the length. So I'm going to be honest with y'all. We don't typically know how long a resume is because it's all online now, right? Yes, if we're at a career fair and you hand me your resume, I know how many pages it is. But when it's online, we have no idea whether it's one, half a page, 10 pages. We probably do know if it's 10 pages, but you get what I'm saying. So as a general rule of thumb, though, they say to keep it to one page for 5 to 10 years of work history. So if you've worked 10 or more years, you're more than welcome to send it to another page. But people tend to be able to fit 5 to 10 years of experience onto one page. And then obviously you want to prioritize the information. The one thing I will note on this, if you are a recent graduate, you probably want your education near the top. If you are not a recent graduate, or let me say this, if you're a recent graduate or changing industries, right? Education might be pertinent near the top. If you have 5 to 10 years of work experience, education probably needs to go at the bottom, unless again, you are changing industries and it's a career focus. So if anyone has questions about that, I'm certainly happy to answer them either here or later. Okay, so let's get into the content piece. So objectives or summaries. So this one is kind of used interchangeably here, but I'm gonna tell you the difference. So objective tends to be a statement, right? It is a 1 or 2 liner that opens a resume that gives the person reading it an indicator of what you want to do or what you want to be, right? What your career focus is. The challenge with objective statements is that sometimes job seekers make them so focused that you are inadvertently keeping yourself from another career that you may be very interested in, right? Let's take it for instance. You apply for a laboratory technician position at an agricultural biotech company. But let's say you're interested in potentially working in anything in biotechnology. But because your objective statement is so focused on that lab tech in ag bio, you're hindering yourself from perhaps getting a position in a company that is not doing agricultural work, right? So if you choose the objective statement, just leave it kind of broad. With that being said, I would actually suggest a summary section. So a summary section, as opposed to a 1 or 2 liner, is a 4 to 6 bullet points section of your resume that gives a synopsis of your background while also pinpointing how you are a fit for the role that you are applying for. So this brings up a good topic. Are resumes one size fits all? And the answer to that is no. And I know this is going to seem like a lot of work, y'all, but really every position that you apply for, you should make sure that that resume is a good indicator or speaks to your skills for how you are a fit for that job. That means that you may have a resume for every single job that you apply for, right? Now, if you're applying for like types of positions, there are certainly opportunities to use that resume more than one time. But I would just make sure that you have focused that resume on each position that you're applying for. And again, we'll get into how you do that, but just as a word of caution. So conciseness is key. So with the summary statement or the objective, you've got to be concise, right? So if you're going with an objective statement, it's ideally 1 to 4 sentences. I would even lean towards 1. If it is a summary section, it is again that 4 to 6 bullet point. Relevance to the role is key. So this is what I was talking about, right? And making sure that that resume specifically speaks to the job that you are applying for, right? Is it including relevant skills that maybe you have from your educational time or career change that will speak to how you are a fit for that open job? So making sure that each resume really speaks to the I can't say it, how you're relevant. I give up. So if it's not relevant to the role, consider omitting it from your resume. I think that is a very good piece of advice, especially if you're trying to free up space, right? So focus on career goals. You're going to want to highlight your career goals and how they align with the position and emphasize what you can bring to the employer, right? All of us have skills that we can bring to a position, whether it's from our education, our work history, or a career change. The work history doesn't have to necessarily be within the space that you're trying to apply for, right? It could be relevant experience from the military or another type of field that you're trying to move into biotech or life sciences. We already spoke to this, but you really want to tailor each application to, or tailor each resume to the application that you are applying for. And then avoid first persons. I think this probably goes without being said, but you don't want to say, I did this, we did this, right? It's not something that speaks to a recruiter or hiring manager as they're looking at a resume. And then the resume, obviously the reader should assume that all the information in the resume is about you. Any questions on this before I keep moving on? Yeah, go ahead.
Can we say I performed, or even in cover letters, it's better not to?
You can in a cover letter. So let's talk a little bit about cover letters though. Cover letters tend to not be read unless you've attracted their attention in this first 6 seconds of your resume, right? So, and it seems kind of backwards, right? Because you would think, oh, I'm going to send a cover letter, then they're going to read the resume, then my references might be in the back. That's not how recruiters or hiring managers tend to read resumes. They read the resume first, and if you gather their attention, again, in those first 6 seconds, then they keep reading, oh yeah, I'm really interested in this person. Only then will they look at your cover letter. At least that's how it tends to be. But yes, you can use I in a cover letter. Yep. Okay, so education. So education should be listed in chronological order with your most recent degree first. Critical information to include, obviously, the institution which you attended, where it was located at, what degree you earned, and the dates of completion. There's a little asterisk here. If you didn't complete the degree, make sure that that is clear, right? Let's say you're still pursuing it, right? Maybe you're currently in the biowork program or you're currently in a master's program. Make sure that it says whatever date you started to present, right? Or currently attending. Where this gets tricky is that when individuals don't clearly articulate that they are either currently pursuing or did not finish the degree, it may look like that you're not being honest on your resume, right? And that will disqualify some candidates if they catch things on a resume that are not honest, right? It might have even been unintended. But if they catch things on a resume that do not paint a true picture of a person's experience, sometimes those candidates are disqualified. So just fair warning. You do not need to list your high school diploma if you have a bachelor's or above. And then GPAs are not necessary to include on a resume. I will say this, if you have a 4.0, while you don't have to include it, I would include it, right? So I would say anything 3.5 and greater is a great thing to celebrate, and I would go ahead and put it on your resume. Again, though, you do not have to include a GPA on your resume. Yeah.
Dates of completion still generally considered when there's multiple years of work post-graduation?
Ask me that again.
If you have a bunch of work experience after you've already finished your degree.
Yes.
Still want to put the date of the degree on there?
You don't have to. You don't have to. You definitely want to make sure that you've marked that you've completed it, right? But if you have multiple years of work experience, I get where your question is now. Mine is not on my LinkedIn profile because I've been working at Kelly for 18 years, right? So you do not have to. If it is a recently obtained degree, I would definitely recommend it. But if your degree is 10, in my case, almost 20 years old, you don't have to include it. Yeah, it's a good question. Other questions on this? Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. 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 For those of y'all who are taking pictures, we can send this out to everybody. So no worries about that. Okay. Work experience. So again, similar to education, you want to list this in reverse chronological order, most recent at the top with months and years listed. Bullets are your friends again. It's the same theme we've had in the other sections, right? You don't want long sentences. Definitely don't want long paragraphs, and be conscious to include keywords from the resume. So let's talk a little bit about keywords. And In a minute, we'll talk about how you guys can use AI. So it's free AI tools. If y'all are not familiar with Gemini and ChatGPT, they're free, but they can help you pinpoint keywords in a resume so that you make sure that it's on, keywords in a job description so that you make sure it's on your resume. So you definitely want to make sure you include keywords that you see in the job description, right? So if it says, let's say it's a biomanufacturing job and they want cell culture experience, right? Make sure you've put cell culture, that you have cell culture experience in your resume, right? You've got upstream biomanufacturing experience. That's important to note in the resume. And let me tell you a couple of reasons why. So A, you certainly want to celebrate the experience that you have and how you match the position. But that's also how recruiters search, right? So recruiters are taught to search on keywords, right? So if the hiring manager comes to us and says, hey, I need someone who's done cell culture, upstream biomanufacturing, those are the keywords that we're going to search resumes on. So you want to make sure you have those included in the body of your resume. So this was another trend that was about 5 or 10 years old, but the idea of putting keywords at the bottom of your resume in white. Has anyone ever heard that? I would suggest not to do that, right? Recruiters can find it because when we search for keywords, right? Let's say you're a chemist and you have the job description said HPLC experience, but you haven't put it in your resume anywhere, but you decide to put it at the bottom in white. And then your resume comes up and this white thing is highlighted at the bottom. Like, well, why isn't that word in black? So then we, unwhite it and there's a bunch of words that have been put in white, right? And we can see that all those keywords are there at the bottom, but they're not in the body of your resume. There's no reason that if somebody has the skills that are in white, they should be in white, right? They should be in your resume, highlighting your experience. So again, y'all, if you have, Susan could invite 5 more people up here to talk about resumes, and you'd probably get a variation of what I'm saying, but there'd probably be some advice that might be different than mine. So do what you feel you're the most comfortable with, but I would advise not to put keywords in white. So let's talk a little bit about acronyms. So let's go back to the HPLC example. If you have HPLC experience, I would suggest somewhere fitting in both the acronym and the fully spelled out word somewhere in your resume, right? Most recruiters, they're working quick. They're going to put HPLC in, but you never know. Someone may decide to spell it out. So I would make sure you put both the acronym and the word in your resume. I would also, back to the upstream and cell culture example, make sure you put both of those words in, right? If you got cell culture experience, you likely have upstream biomanufacturing experience. Maybe not, but the two tend to go hand in hand if you're working in a biomanufacturing environment. So if that's the case, you want to make sure that they're both put on the resume because again, you never know what the recruiter is going to search. Okay, so be specific with instrumentations, assays, procedures that you have competency with. If you worked on a specific make and model and you remember that, certainly put that in here as well. And you want to talk about the day-to-day contributions that you made in the job, right? And what really sets a resume apart is when you can quantify it, right? So let's say you were on a project and you were able to identify a step in a process that saved the company $500,000. I would put that in here, right? Certainly that might come up in an interview, but if you can find a way to fit it into your resume as well, that will really make you stick out. So again, I would just include as much as you can here. Any questions on this one? Okay. All right, extracurriculars, references, and publications. So any of this should be listed at the bottom of the resume if you choose to include it. Couple of things. I would make the reference document a completely separate document that you provide only when requested, right? Your references are, these are people who are going to vouch for you, right? So you want to make sure that they are only called on an opportunity that A, you can give them a heads up about, hey, I'm applying for XYZ company. I think they're going to call you about my position or my application for a chemist, or whatever position that you're applying for. But you want to be able to give them a heads up that references have been requested. So again, I would keep this as a separate document that you can supply when asked for. Same with publications. So if you're an individual who has a list of publications, I would not suggest putting that in your resume, but rather having it as a separate document that you can supply. So we get a lot of questions about extracurriculars. So the general rule of thumb is that you should only list extracurricular activity, whether it be a professional organization, a civic organization, or a volunteer opportunity, when it is relevant to the position. I agree with that in part. Let me say this. If you are really passionate about something with a local organization or a church group, or fill in the blanks, if that is something that you're really passionate about, I would include it. You never know when that topic is going to be commonality with a recruiter or a hiring manager. So again, if it's something that you're really passionate about and you've done a lot of outreach, you've done a lot of volunteer work with that opportunity, then I would say include it. Otherwise, if it's just something that you're casually a part of, if it's not relevant to the industry or the job, I would not include it. Let's see here. Awards or achievements. Absolutely, you want to include these. You could put these you would want to put these at the bottom of the resume. But definitely, this is your opportunity to celebrate all of the hard work and all of the achievements that you've had. This is not the time to be humble, right? This is the opportunity for you to shout from the rooftops about what a great candidate you are. So absolutely, if you received an award at school or in your last place of employment, definitely include that here. All right, any questions on this before I keep moving? Yeah.
How long should be the list? Well, it's a good question.
Yeah.
How long should be the list of we're talking about like top 5? And then, let's say you have 20 or 30 publications, so you can cherry pick the ones that are more relevant to jobs you're applying. Are we talking about a top 5 so that if you're eventually in a screen call or something, anyone can actually ask you about those that are relevant, or we just even compress it to, let's say, a top 3, or go greedier and do top 10?
Great question. So if you choose to include it on your resume, I would choose a consolidated list. 3 to 5 is fine. If you have it as a separate document, include them. List them all. Yeah.
And part 2, regarding the your awards or achievements,
Yep.
things like that. How do you, for example, I know that there are things that are transferable. For example, if you receive an award regarding leadership or something like excellence in the stuff that you've done.
Yep.
But it's not, that there are skills that are transferable. For example, you receive something as a PA.
Yep.
Including something as a grad student was excellent PA, but that shows leadership, that shows entrepreneurship,
Yeah.
all those skills. But that doesn't necessarily, I don't know how someone would look at that and say, or, excellence in teaching, excellence in, or representing your institution as an ambassador in another country. How is that something that a recruiter in those 6 seconds would look at it and actually make a connection? Oh, this is definitely transferable as leadership skills, cross-functional teamwork. This person has those abilities just by looking at that award, or would that open the conversation for a follow-up? Because if you get that call, then you can actually build that bridge.
Right.
But if you just put it as a bullet point, that could actually be the difference between a 1-page resume that can be looked in 6 seconds, or a 2-page resume that's just like too damn long.
Yeah. So if you feel like it does have transferable skills or a transferable component to the industry or job you're applying for, I would include it. And here's also what I would include in the resume. If you've received an award or an achievement that is not super common, right? So if someone is listed on Forbes 40 under 40, I think as a general rule, the population of America knows what Forbes 40 under 40 is, right? But I might not know about an award that UNC gave out to research associates, in their chemistry department. So in that instance, you'd want to make sure you list about the award you received, right? So maybe it's, I received the XYZ award at UNC Chapel Hill. And then in italics underneath it, awarded to great TAs who exhibited leadership, blah, 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 whatever it is, right? So if it is not a well-known award, I would include some sort of, describer of what it is. Yeah, good question there. Yep. Okay, before I move on to AI, I do just want to mention here, and I think I started to bring it up with the white keywords, but anything on your resume is fair game, y'all. And I have seen hiring managers and supervisors find what is seemingly the most minuscule detail in a resume and ask a candidate about it. So anything that is on your resume, you need to be prepared to talk about. And if you listed an instrumentation or an assay or some sort of skill, make sure that you know the theory and practicality of what you're talking about, right? Because we've certainly seen hiring managers and supervisors dive in with candidates on that. So you just want to be well prepared to do that. Okay, so let's talk about AI. So I mentioned this a little bit, but Gemini is Google's AI tool. It used to be called Bard, for those of y'all who are familiar with that. And then ChatGPT is OpenAI's AI tool. So both of them are free. ChatGPT does have a paid version, but you won't need it. So you can just utilize the free one. So let's talk about how they can assist you in your job search. So as I mentioned earlier, there's some keyword identification. So essentially you can just upload a job description, copy and paste, and ask it to look for keywords that will help increase your chances of getting noticed by applicant tracking systems, which are what we use and what all the large corporations use to manage applications to the open positions. It can also work on content creation, so it can help you draft sections of your resume or your cover letter. It can give you feedback, right? So if you load your resume in there and say, hey, give me some feedback on the layout or the content of that, it'll spit out feedback. Hey, consider shortening this, consider changing this word to this. It'll also do job matching. So AI-powered search platforms can match job seekers with relevant job openings based on their skills. So this is sort of at a high level, all that AI can do for job searchers. I'm not going to read through these because they're exactly worded how you would put them in ChatGPT or in Gemini. But again, we'll send this out. But these are just some general prompts on how to rewrite my resume summary section. Hey, my resume is long. What would you suggest in terms of condensing it? Hey, I'm applying for this position. Can you help me rewrite my bullet points? I have experience in this role, but it's not directly related. Can you help me find some transferability? And can you help me identify some strong action verbs? So I'm going through all of this. And then at the end, I'm going to tell y'all some personal feedback as well as some things to kind of be aware of when you're using AI. So it can also help you quantify achievements, right? So that piece where I was like, hey, if you saved a company $500,000 by working on a process, it can help you write that. It can help you highlight different skills. So can you suggest relevant technical or soft skills to include in my skills section? I have experience with XYZ software, but I'm not sure how to showcase it. Can you suggest some keywords? And then here's some just general prompts from ChatGPT, again, about providing feedback or helping rewrite summaries or different parts of a resume. So I will say this, y'all. I know AI is scary to some people, but it is here to stay. And it is everywhere that we look. Our recruiters are using AI, companies are using AI, and ultimately, we just all got to figure out how to use it in a way that we're comfortable with, right? So some cautions about AI. So the downsides are you potentially could lose your voice, right? And what I mean by that is the way that you type, if y'all have never used Bard or Gemini or ChatGPT, there is a distinct feel about the way that the verbiage comes out. It tends to be pretty long. It tends to be kind of fluffed up with some fancy words. It just doesn't feel like me, to be honest. And I can even tell when I get emails sometimes, like, gosh, I know this person and this doesn't sound like them. Like they must have had some help, which is okay, right? Like it's okay to get help, but you lose your voice in a certain way, right? And the resume may get you the interview, but you've ultimately got to be able to articulate how you are a fit for that job, right? So my word of caution as you use ChatGPT and Gemini is just to make sure you read every single word that comes out of those tools and that it is accurate and that it reflects who you are as a person, right? And that it sounds like you. It's absolutely okay to use some of it. Just make sure that it sounds like you. Obviously, sometimes unprofessional language is included. Again, you want to make sure you read it all. Like I said, sometimes it's a little fluffed up. So let's talk about the privacy protection piece. I think we all know this, but once you put something on the internet, it's there forever, right? And potentially other people could access it. So just make sure whatever you're putting into the prompts that you're okay with anyone seeing it, right? A resume might be okay for that because you want people to see it anyway. But just remember, whatever you put in the tool, people can see. So tips for AI, using AI successfully, I would always start with a draft. Don't just have it create your resume with nothing there, right? Have it improve on things that you've already created. Obviously use it for editing and suggestions. You're going to maintain control because you're going to read everything, change anything that doesn't sound like you. Obviously research the AI tools. I do have to say, read the fine print, right? I don't work for Gemini or ChatGPT or any of those firms. So definitely read the fine print and know what you're getting into, know what you're using. And then obviously seek human feedback. So while AI tools are great, it doesn't replace all of us, right? It doesn't replace a recruiter who's looked at 100,000 resumes over their career and knows what speaks to a hiring manager. So just make sure that you seek out people that you know. Seek out recruiters, seek out someone from my team, seek out a friend, a family member, a neighbor. There's lots of people who have reviewed resumes throughout their career. So just seek out human advice. Okay, we're doing good on time. Okay, so let's talk about networking. So I know we're going to have a networking session after this. For those of you who have not done a ton of networking, we thought we'd go through just some do's and don'ts. So I inserted Merriam-Webster's definition of networking here, but it's just the exchange of information or services among individuals, groups, and institutions, right? So after we get out of here, we're going to talk to each other about our backgrounds and our careers and how we can help each other. So before you get started, I would ask yourself a couple of questions. What do I have to offer others? Like I mentioned earlier, we all have something to offer, right? We all have a distinct background that makes us who we are, and that is valuable to other people, right? Whether it's an experience we had at work, whether it's an academic experience, whether it's you're involved with a professional organization and it's going really well. We all have stuff to offer others. You need to identify what you need from others though, right? Are you seeking their help in finding a professional organization? Are you seeking their help in identifying a new opportunity? Do you want an informational interview because they have the job you want one day? These are all things that you kind of have to figure out before you get in there. you also have to wonder or determine whether you're comfortable talking to people, right? So, and in what instance, right? Do you want to talk to someone one-on-one? Maybe a big networking event is not something that you're comfortable with, and you'd rather get someone's card and follow up with them one-on-one and take them to coffee. Maybe you're fine being in a big event. Maybe that's absolutely okay. Maybe you want to take a friend. All of these things are things that you have to consider about yourself. Do I have any business cards? How will people get my contact information? This one is pretty important, right? So as you're meeting people, how are they going to know how to follow up with you afterwards? At a networking event, a traditional networking event, tends not to be sharing your resume, right? If any of y'all want to share your resume with me or one of my colleagues, that would make sense. But if you're at a networking event at a brewery, probably don't want to be passing around your resume, right? So think about business cards. There are some options where you can create a virtual business card. So if y'all haven't seen these, essentially someone scans your phone and they will get your contact information. So that's an option. And then, are you a member of an organization? And how do I become involved? So that's what I was talking about with the professional organizations and getting involved with that piece. Okay, networking no-nos. So I think, again, a lot of these are common sense, but we'll go through them. So don't be manipulative or high pressure. Don't cross the line into something that feels too personal. Certainly don't ask someone to disregard their ethics, act immorally, break the law. Don't overpromise and underdeliver. That's always a big one for life. And don't let the relationship be one-sided, right? We used to talk about this power of reciprocity. And I think sometimes job seekers don't feel like they have anything to offer. And that's not true, y'all. You guys have peers, you have colleagues that you've worked with in school or at past companies. You're involved with professional organizations. You gain different skills through attending seminars and things like that. Everyone has something to offer, so don't let it be one-sided. So in terms of etiquette, time is precious. So asking for permission really comes not in what we're about to do with the networking event, but if you ask someone to go grab coffee, right? If you're doing an informal interview or a networking event over coffee one-on-one, time is precious, right? So don't take up more time than you need. And also make sure that you've asked them to take that time, right? If you've asked them for coffee, that's, you're asking for permission. So confidentiality is really important to some people. So don't name drop, right? Don't say, oh my gosh, I was just having coffee with Angela and she said blah, 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 to a bunch of different people, right? Angela may not like that you're telling everybody that. So I will say this, and I've lived in this area for a long time. I've been doing this for almost 2 decades. RTP is very small, very small. I know it feels like we have a lot of different companies here and thousands and thousands and thousands of employees. It is very small. So you definitely don't want to burn a bridge because there's always somebody. So what is it? The 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon, or somebody knows somebody. It's probably less than 7 here. So, okay, be thankful. So recognize their assistance by sending them a follow-up message. You can do this on LinkedIn, right? So connect with them on LinkedIn, send them a note after you meet with them at a networking event. Hey, it was so great to meet with you. I'd love to follow up with you on X, Y, or Z. You know, does a talk next week work? Or just say thank you and then keep them in your network, right? And then obviously try to return the favor, right? So this is what we talked about with reciprocity. So in conclusion, this is for networking. Know who you are, what you want. Know that you're always interviewing, right? You never know who you're going to run into. I'll share a fun story. So I live in Pittsburgh. I was at a local, just small mom and pop place picking up lunch one day, and I had on my Kelly Science and Clinical shirt. And the person working behind the counter who gave me my food ran after me and he said, "Oh, sorry, excuse me, excuse me." I was thinking something had been left out of my bag of food. And he said, "I saw that you work for Kelly Science and Clinical. Do you mind if I give you my contact information? I'm a clinical research professional. I'm having trouble finding a job. Would you be able to help me?" That person is currently interviewing for us, right? Because of that one interaction he had handing me my food. So the reason I mentioned that story is that you never know who you're going to run into, how they can help you. So you just always want to be kind and graceful and, make sure you put your best foot forward.